There is a God. Or at the very least, Speaker of the House John Boehner understands how important it is for joke and political humor writers everywhere that the Republican Party continues to shoot itself in the over and over. They just can't help but let their outsized egos push the boundaries of political discourse and decorum, puking their hubris all over the general population in the process. Then they wonder why their numbers are shrinking so fast. Recently, Boehner and his fellow House Republicans apparently got together and figured out how to make themselves look even further out of touch and ripe with extremists as possible. They are once again revving up their engines for a fight over the nation's debt ceiling. They seem to have it in their heads that somehow it's their point of leverage with the president in budget negotiations, despite having lost on that front every time they've squared off over America continuing to pay its debts. The debt ceiling, in case anyone is wondering, has absolutely nothing to do with incurring future debt. All the debt ceiling does is allow us to continue to pay back our debts, which the Constitution spells out very clearly in the 14th Amendment as being always valid. If you're having a bit of dumbass deja vu over this, you're not alone. Just after winning re-election last November, President Obama squared off with Boehner and the GOP over the debt ceiling, and the intransigence of the morons on the right was directly cited by the credit rating agencies when our country's credit rating was dropped last year. They cost us a notch on our credit rating dicking around with this issue last time, and they looked like jackasses all the way. Perhaps the GOP is just becoming gluttonous for bad publicity, but surely it won't look good for them to risk pushing us into default on our debts again. Boehner and Company's newest tactic is to offer what they're calling a menu of cuts that President Obama can choose from, and just how much he decides to clip the social safety net and gut programs that actually help people is just how much the GOP is willing to raise the debt ceiling. For example, if Obama finally caves into the right's demand to privatize Social Security, they'll give him a debt ceiling increase for the rest of his term. Expose the elderly to the volatility of the market, and anyone watching the market in the last couple of weeks could see how that would be a nightmare scenario living on a fixed income, and Obama will get to keep paying our bills. And here I thought the Republicans were the fiscally responsible party. But they're basically telling Obama that it's a choice between screwing over the poor and elderly in this country and trashing our credit. I'm becoming more and more convinced that what we're witnessing may not be the death spiral of the Republican Party, but it's at least something that looks an awful lot like a death spiral. This isn't to say that once they're done driving all their hopes for success in 2014 and 2016 away, that they'll be gone forever. There's just far too much money already wrapped up in the Republican Party for those invested in it to simply walk away. But the more and more idiocy that they front as legitimate policy, they will fall behind everywhere but the reddest of states. No one in their right mind thinks that toying with the full faith and credit of the United States of America is a good idea. No one other than congressional Republicans, that is. In the end, Obama will hopefully hold tight to his stated position that he is not bargaining over the debt ceiling again. Whether that means a silly platinum coin is going to be minted, or whether that means the 14th Amendment will be invoked in some other fashion, Obama's choices are quite simple. Go along with the lunacy of the Republicans, get quote-unquote creative with the payment of our bills, or do what he did last time, and let the credit rating agencies do the heavy lifting for him. If Republicans think anyone else will be blamed for the ensuing debacle, they're sorely mistaken. I don't know if John Boehner just lives in a Groundhog Day type scenario, where he wakes up every day at the same time to the same Sonny and Cher song on the radio, and gets out of bed with the same idiotic ideas of how to get what he wants out of the president, but it sure seems to be the case. We've been down this road on the debt ceiling just 6 months ago, and the Republicans lost then, too. Then again, it was only 15 years ago that the GOP spent all summer long ginning up a scandal over sexual impropriety that they believed was enough to trigger enough of a backlash that they'd be able to impeach and remove a popular sitting president. And here they are giving Darrell Issa all the free rein he needs to do it all over again. So, maybe history repeating itself really is the new Republican way. It makes you wonder if they're even trying anymore, or if they've decided to just remain the thorn in America's side, the weights around our ankles. Perhaps they figured out that they cast their lot so entirely with religious fundamentalists and right-wing extremists that they'll never look credible and trustworthy enough to be in the White House again. But they don't care, because they can just stay in their gerrymandered districts and soak up congressional salaries and benefits and have the extra added bonus of impeding societal evolution. Or maybe they're just a bunch of clueless, heartless sociopaths who think that the best way to treat poor people is to indoctrinate and then systematically ignore them until you need to lob more red meat their way before an election. We can joke about the way the Republicans have managed to wall themselves off from reality. We can joke about the fact that they're still trying to convince us not to pay our bills. Bills that as members of Congress they have had a direct hand in racking up. The sad truth, though, is that there can be dire consequences for the world economy if Republicans don't locate their thinking caps and put them on, pronto. The reality is that our debt buoys the markets worldwide. That's why banks are still lining up to lend us money at historically low rates, despite all our problems in the past. The world knows that as long as we can pay our debts, the global economy will keep humming. The game Republicans are playing now is like Jenga. They're trying to see how many pieces of our country's foundation they can knock out. Infrastructure, energy, the economy, without toppling the entire thing. By choosing to tell the world that unless Obama agrees to more cuts on top of the trillions in cuts and deficit reduction he's already achieved, that they are willing to tank not just our economy, but the economies of countries around the world who depend on us to being a good credit risk. Republicans are signaling that it's austerity or bust for them. And sadly, if they get their way, it's austerity and bust for us.